إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وجعل منها زوجها وبعث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تسألون به والأرحم إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم من يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Last week I mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that after the testimony of faith, after saying ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan rasulullah, that the salah is the best thing that we can do. But what about that testimony of faith? It comes first. And we know from another saying of his that the best thing, he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best thing that the messengers before me and that I myself have said is La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. That there is no God but Allah alone and without partner. This is something that we say every day, inshallah, in our prayers. And it's something that is paramount for us as Muslims, this testimony of faith. And one of the amazing things that really gives evidence to this fact is that in a lot of manuals of fiqh, at least in the Maliki school, before you actually get to the fiqh, before you get to the how-to of how to pray, how to fast, how to give zakah, that you actually learn theology. You learn about tawheed. And that this is the foundation upon which all of those actions are based. Our belief that there is no God but Allah. And tawheed is something that we have to understand, and frankly, even after we do understand, we have to revisit it. We have to revisit it and renew our relationship with it because it is one of those things that is infinite. And we are finite. And so in revisiting it, we deepen our understanding of what it means to say that there is one God. Allah gave us an excellent tool to accomplish this. We know that Surah Ikhlas holds the weight of 1/3 of the Quran, right? That this very short surah that we often say in our prayers is so weighty that reciting it 3 times equals reciting the whole of the Quran. And, you know, this is something that I heard for many, many years after I first became Muslim. I heard this said for many, many years, and I never really quite comprehended why that was. But it is called Surah Ikhlas for a reason. It is the chapter of, you can translate ikhlas as sincerity or purity, but it is the purest and most sincere statement of tawheed that we have. And so what I want to do is I want to go through this surah, ayah by ayah, and explore it and try to get a grasp of why it is so weighty and why it can actually guide our understanding of tawheed to new depths. The first ayah of this surah is Qul hu Allahu ahad. Say he is one God. And, you know, one of the things I like to emphasize often is that we really ought to, even if we aren't Arabic speakers, we ought to seek to understand the Arabic of the surahs that we learn, because it takes us into new depths of understanding and of comprehension. And ahad is one of these words that deserves a lot of attention, because we translate it as one. Say he is one God. But you know, in English, we have this word one, and we use it in different ways. We can use it to count, and we can use it to talk about something that is totally unique, something that stands on its own. And this latter use of the word one is what ahad is doing. In Arabic, the word wahid is the word for one that we use to count. And wahid implies ithnain. One here implies two, and three, and four, and so on. It is a number that implies the existence of other things after it. Ahad is not like that. Ahad is a type of one that admits of no other. It has no opposite. It has no counterpart. Ahad is oneness that stands alone. Qul hu Allahu ahad. Say he is one God. Allahu samad. And samad is one of these words that if you pick up translations of the Quran, you will see it translated in many different ways. It's often translated as the self-sufficient, the eternal, the besought of all, meaning everything seeks it out. And these are all good translations, but they are also all limited in some capacity. Samad is a word that means all of these things, but if we do not understand exactly how it is grounded in the Arabic language, we don't get all the nuances of it. We don't get all the flavors. Samad is a word that can be used for human beings. A samad is a word that can be used for a soldier who goes into battle and does not tire and does not thirst. This is a soldier that you want on your team, because you can put him on the battlefield and he is self-sufficient. He doesn't need to come back and replenish himself through rest, through water, through food. He can go until the battle is done. A mismad from the same root. You can hear the samada in this word, mismad. A mismad likewise is a camel that can travel through the desert seemingly without end, without any similar needs, without needing to eat, without needing to drink. And that camel can take you to places that you could not have gone otherwise by yourself, especially in the desert. You cannot be self-sufficient. You cannot stand alone in a harsh environment the way that camel can. And so that's a valuable thing to have, a camel like that, or a soldier like that. This same root can also apply to hills, and I'm forgetting the exact word here, but there is a word connected to this root that is used for a hill, which is an advantageous place to occupy in a battle. And any military tacticians will know that the high ground is a place that you want to have when you're in battle. It is a place where you can fend off a group much larger than yourself. It is a place of self-sufficiency. It is a place that you seek out in a time of battle. So samad is both something that we seek out because it is self-sufficient. We are constantly seeking Allah because it is He who is self-sufficient. It is He who has no need, and we have many needs. And we can take each and every one of our needs to Allah, and He will be able to provide for each and every one of them. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu Samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He was neither born, no, he neither gives birth, nor does he beget, nor does he give birth. This was a line that was, a sort of a rebuke of the theology of the Meccans, who were polytheists. It likewise was a rebuke of the Christians, who believed that Jesus was the Son of God. This is a fascinating line that, it goes beyond the historical context in which it was revealed. Because what it is in fact telling us is that self-sufficiency that Allah has, that we learn about with the word Samad, places Allah outside of the chain of creation. Anything that was born, by implication, rational implication, logical implication, is not self-sufficient, because it needs something else to bring it into existence. And the fact that it must give birth to other things means that it will eventually itself come to an end. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad. And there is nothing like unto him. There is nothing in this creation that you can turn to and point to and say, this is like Allah. This is the perfect analogy. This is the thing that can guide our understanding. There's nothing like that, because there is nothing in creation that is not caused, that did not have a beginning, and that will not have an end. Allah is unlike those things. And if you take this view of Surah Ikhlas, it's amazing to see how it sort of takes us through an understanding of Allah in His oneness at sort of like different levels of creation. Qul hu Allahu ahad tells us that when we think of God, with reference to nothing else, forget about the world, forget about the heavens, forget about the angels, forget about all the magnificent beings that He has put throughout creation, that Allah by Himself, He is one alone. And that is enough. That is sufficient understanding of Allah. But it continues. Allahu Samad. There is a creation. There is a world that He has created, and everything in that world turns to Him in need. At its most basic form, everything turns to Allah in need of its own being. Our being is accidental, the philosophers would say. We don't have to exist. Allah chose for us to exist out of the infinite things that He chose for to not exist. But Allah is that thing that is, He's not a thing, but Allah is necessary being, we would say philosophically. His existence is mandatory, whereas ours is not. And that is why we turn to Him in need. So we're coming down the orders of creation here. Now that we are in creation, you need to know that things in creation have beginnings and they have ends. They are caused and they are caused to end. They are born and they die. And within that creation, there is nothing that you will find that is like that is like Allah, that is necessary being. These are elaborate philosophical concepts that our theologians and the theologians of other faith communities, through the influence of our theology, it might be said, have come to in sort of like profoundly systematic philosophical ways. And yet this is something that Allah tells us in the Quran in a way that is easily digestible, in a way that is accessible to each and every one of us. This is Tawheed, to understand the difference between Allah and His creation. This is something that Imam Junaid told us, that Tawheed is to understand the difference between the Creator and the creation. And this is what Surah Ikhlas teaches us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. You know, something I've been reflecting on recently is, and related to the issue of Tawheed, is how we live our lives. And, you know, frankly, how I live my life. I think how most of us are sort of brought up or directed in the society to live our lives. We are very goal-oriented people, right? Like we, from the time that we're very young, and frankly, you know, what we're already doing with him is setting him up for a goal-oriented life. Um, he's in preschool, and we have him in e-learning. Uh, Sometimes I ask myself why he's so young. But you know, that just seems to be what we're supposed to do, and we're just kind of going with the flow. I think, you know, through the sort of modern comforts that we enjoy, and you know, through the technological innovations that we live with, we have become extremely proficient at directing the course of our own lives, seemingly. You know, we know what we want to be when we grow up at a very early age, and we set out on that path. We go to college with plans of getting out and getting this job and having a career and getting the husband or getting the wife and having the kids so that they can do the whole thing for themselves, right? This is how we live. It is, in many ways, if we do not stop to reflect through all of that, if we do not stop to really hold ourselves to account, it is very easy to start believing that, in fact, we are directing our own lives, right? That's an illusion that is increasingly easy to sustain because of where we live and when we live. And it's something that sort of flies in the face. Idris, son, please get down. Take a seat. It's something that flies in the face of this acknowledgement in Surah Ikhlas that Allah is a samad, that He is the one that we turn to for our needs. And we usually turn to our own selves for our needs, right? We think we're charting the course, we're steering the ship. And if we have learned anything this year, I think we've all had a profound lesson in the reality that that is not the case. I mean, how many of our plans this year have been derailed and misdirected because of, I don't have to tell you what's happened in 2020, but you know, I know mine have, and I've seen it with most of the people that I know. In some way or another, we feel that we have been set off course. But Islam is not that, right? Allah doesn't command us to get degrees. He doesn't command us to take charge of our own lives and to go out and get the things out of the world that we desire. In fact, what He tells us is al-hakumu takathur. You're distracted by gathering wealth. You're distracted by your own ambitions in this life. Hatta zurtum al-maqabir. Until you visit the grave. So, I mean, I don't want to get too down on ourselves. This is the human condition. Humans have always been like this. But what Allah tells us is that this is, in fact, not the reality. You are distracted. You are, in many ways, deluded in believing that this is your state. And many of us do not realize the reality of that delusion until we visit our graves. And all of our plans are over. And all we have at that point is our worship, our good deeds, and you know, whatever we have left in this world that proceeds from us of those good deeds. Islam is to do the best, not to achieve the right goal, but to do right in every single situation that we encounter. This is something I've been sitting with lately. I'm just sharing it with you guys. But we can't control the circumstances of our life. We can control whether or not we have patience, whether or not we persevere through those circumstances, whether or not we blame God, or whether or not we thank Him for the blessings that we still have and seek increase from Him. This is what we're called to in this life. And at the level of action, at the level of our intentions, this is Tawheed. This is the acknowledgement of God's oneness, that we are not in control, that we can only control the state of our hearts and what we do with our limbs in this world. So may Allah give us pure intentions. May He manifest the Tawheed that we proclaim with our tongues, in our hearts, and in the actions that we take in this world. And may we not be diverted. May we not be deluded by the most basic human illusion that we are in control. May we recognize Allah as As-Samad and turn to Him with our needs and with our desires and with our wants. Anything that is on our heart, ask Him when you're in sujood for that. Ask Him to give you that and fulfill His rights of lordship over you. Ameen. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب آمين آمين